guys, so today I'm going to be reading you chapter 1, and like most chapter 1s, it really sets the tone for the rest of the book. The chapter is called A Sick Society, and the point that I really want to make in both this chapter and the whole book overall is that the increased rate of mental illness that we see in our world today makes sense when you consider the craziness of the society that we do live in. So I think it's very common for people to feel blamed. Either there's implicit blame, or maybe people are explicitly blamed for having the problems that they do. But the fact is, it's not really your fault. It is the fact that, as the name of the chapter suggests, we live in a sick society. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Jake, and I am a recovering perfectionist. There's not anything inherently wrong with wanting to be perfect, but for some of us, well, our motivation for being perfect is unhealthy. I didn't strive for perfection because I wanted to just be the best. I just thought you had to be the best in order to get love. It was as if there wasn't enough to go around, so you had to prove that you were deserving. And so I competed. When I was wearing myself out, trying to be a good friend to all of my friends, all of the time, it wasn't because I'm just that nice, but because I thought I had to constantly remind them, mostly through actions, of my value. I would loan people money, half knowing I'd never get it back. I'd house them for free, even when they were a bad influence on me. I'd hold others' secrets, regardless of how heavy many of them were. And I would do favors for people, no matter how inconvenient, and sometimes even at the expense of things I needed to do. I'd clean their houses for them while we were hanging out, because that's what good friends do, right? The question, at first a whisper in the back of my mind, finally became loud enough to make itself heard over the busy work I was covering it up with. When am I good enough? What was I trying to prove in my perfectionism? And to whom? I don't need to prove myself to anyone. These and many related thoughts raced through my head as I tried to figure out how trying to be a good person had turned me into a doormat. Also, why did I think I had to try so damn hard to be a good person? It was exhausting. I was quite surprised to realize that not all the people that I thought of as my friends were actually my friends. Some of them were willing to benefit from my generosity and didn't feel compelled to give anything in return. I wanted to be mad at them, but mostly, I was mad at myself. I let them leech off of me, and I never said anything or asked for anything in return because I thought I shouldn't. I thought that you were supposed to give until you can't give anymore, and then still give some more, and trust that others will take care of you. That didn't quite happen. So I became rather cynical and skeptical of others at that time. A better alternative, as I see it now, would have been to acknowledge the feelings of low self-worth that led to my idea that I shouldn't ask for anything. Asking implies you think you deserve positive attention, love, compassion, generosity, and all the other things that humans need to survive. But I didn't seem to believe that I was deserving. Not unless I was perfect, of course. You see, these things had to be earned. I'm working on being less cynical and skeptical, and yet I also kind of love that those are a part of me. In the process of finding out I had some fake friends who didn't have my best interests at heart, I also found out that I have some true friends, and my relationships with them deepened. It took being taken advantage of and finding out that I low-key hate myself to learn that I had the love I wanted all along. When I was focusing on all the bad people in my life and my misguided motivations, I felt a fiery anger, and I became deeply resentful. Upon shifting my attention to the good people in my life, I wasn't as upset anymore. I also had more time and energy, suggesting that I had made a good choice. I'd be lying if I said this all happened at once. I had to keep learning what it meant to let go. If I wanted to do the things I thought a good friend would do, I was able to come from a place of, I want to do this thing for you because you're such a good friend to me, rather than, I need to do this so that you'll keep liking me. This different motivation, even with the same action sometimes, made a world of difference. Now, I thought that after this huge epiphany and growth on my part, that I was suddenly healed or whole or something spiritually spectacular like that. And yet, that was just the beginning. Learning that I didn't feel I had any intrinsic value didn't do anything to change it. It only brought it into my awareness, and the work of changing that, of learning to put a realistic value on what I offer, both personally and professionally, and loving myself simply because I deserve to be loved, that was going to take some time. You don't have to look far to get the advice, just love yourself. But it's not that easy to figure out what that really means. After 20-something years of feeling like not enough, how does one suddenly feel as though they are enough? I decided I was ready to give that option a try if someone could just explain to me exactly how to do it so I could be sure that I was doing it right. I'm somewhat of a type A perfectionist at times, and I didn't want to leave anything to chance. Problem was, there's no one-size-fits-all approach that can tell you how to appreciate who you are, just as there's no book that can tell you how to be perfect. Books can provide plenty of valuable information, but some of the things most worth knowing are the things that can only be learned through experience. This book, as you may have guessed by now, is about making sense of my experience. It's like a hybrid memoir and self-help book in which I use my life as examples for the sake of helping me get past them and helping you to learn from them. I've always been an observant person with an arguably overly analytical mind, and now, with my master's degree in marriage and family therapy, I get to combine these gifts in a useful way. Gretchen Rubin had to take an uncomfortably honest look at her life in the Happiness Project as she added new resolutions each month for a year to make her a better and happier person, and she details the many ways in which it was worthwhile. Inspired to undertake a similar project in my own life using 10 different models of therapy that I'd learned about, the idea for this book was born. This admittedly major step forward in my life was a double-edged sword. I had discovered my purpose, my life's work, in studying to become a therapist, and yet everything I was learning seemed to tell the perfectionist in me that I wasn't good enough. I thought I had to be perfect before I could be of use to people as a therapist. In fact, this book was motivated in big part by the self-doubt I had regarding my ability to actually be a therapist. And it's why I even took time off from my master's program to work on this. Anyway, since I had begun a serious relationship not long after starting my program, I was eager to analyze every detail of the relationship and practice therapy in it so that it could be the perfect relationship. I wanted the experiential knowledge of using these different methods of conflict resolution, as I thought of them, so I often overlooked the pressure that I was putting on both of us to make the relationship succeed. I couldn't yet accept that nothing and no one is perfect, and that there's immense beauty in accepting what is. Being a marriage and family therapist, or MFT for short, doesn't mean that I have to have a perfect relationship to be taken seriously. It also doesn't mean that I'm not going to have problems and occasionally be temporarily at a loss as for how to solve them. I am allowed to be human, and to be human is to be imperfect. I had to learn this. had to read it in a book and realize that I knew this to be true, and it felt so significant. I was wearing myself out, trying to make everyone else happy at the expense of my own happiness. When my boyfriend asked me, "What makes you happy?" it scared me to learn that I didn't know the answer. Who doesn't know the answer to this question? It should be easy. Why don't you know this? I thought to myself. Naturally, I assumed this meant something was wrong with me. I thought I had to be broken or defective in some way to not know what makes me happy. Then, in one of my classes, something else I read really seemed to stick with me. Sometimes we internalize the problems of our environment and believe the problem is with us. We live in a society that values productivity far more than happiness, and that is a sign of a sick society, not of something wrong with me. Now, you know when you find something unexpectedly that just really makes you think and you find yourself questioning everything you think you know? Well, I had a moment like that as I played with this idea that I am not the problem. Like many boys in the 90s, I was on Ritalin because I was too wild and unfocused. Now, in hindsight, it does make sense that it served a societal purpose for me to be taking Ritalin. Teachers have too many students in one class to have someone bouncing all over the place and doing as he pleased. Obedience to authority is highly valued in our society, but I wanted more from my parents and from other teachers. I wanted explanations, to understand things on a deeper level, to be treated like an equal, and I was told to be quiet, to not ask certain questions. The problem was never me. It was the expectations the society had for me. I realized that I was aiming for perfection because I was taught to value efficiency and productivity. In a capitalist economy, just okay doesn't stand a chance. The bar was set impossibly high, setting me up for failure from the get-go. Letting go of my perfectionism involved peeling back layers, dropping certain pretenses, and plenty of focused reflection and honesty. I was letting go of things that no longer served me, if ever. I had to acknowledge a lot of pain and anger and other parts of myself that I was too scared or ashamed to look at, and then learn how to leave them behind and become who I was underneath. If this sounds difficult and slow, that's because it is. I had to shed the idea that I don't have value if I'm not overworking myself and spending all my money on things that will allegedly make me look and feel good. I started letting go of perfectionism little by little, even though I didn't yet know who I'd be without it. It wasn't just letting go, figuring out who I was, and loving myself. It was also about learning how to let go, how to figure out who I am, and how to love myself. There's a lot of learning involved here. It's funny, in that way you have to laugh at how fucked up some things are, that people need to learn how to love themselves. I was raised in a family in which the expectation that we'd go to college was pretty explicit. It wasn't a matter of whether I'd go, but of what I'd study. It started with journalism and then became business before it was hospitality and tourism management, and that was all just in the first year. In the second year, my major was psychology, and then I graduated with my degree in nutrition with a minor in management. I then spent a year in a graduate program for sports medicine while also trying to get my teaching credential so I could be a high school health teacher and athletic trainer, which is different from a personal trainer. When that didn't work out, I thought I wanted to pursue a degree in public health. And with every shift in focus, I thought, I think I can be perfect at this. I'll learn everything there is to know about it and be the absolute best at it. No pressure there. When I stumbled upon marriage and family therapy, it just felt right. It didn't demand perfection. In fact, in one of my first few classes, we learned about the concept of the self of the therapist and its value in therapy. Where traditionally, psychologists were a blank screen upon which clients projected their fears and anxieties, the self of the therapist requires the therapist to bring their own hurts and limitations into the therapeutic relationship, openly acknowledging their presence, along with a dedication to working on them. Rather than being ashamed of their humanity or denying it, therapists instead had to take ownership for all parts of themselves so that clients can feel comfortable doing the same. My calling actually told me explicitly to not strive for perfection, but to embrace my imperfections and scars and use them to help others heal. This was an intriguing new perspective for me. Well, it hasn't been easy, and I'm still far from being done. I may never be done, and I'm learning to be okay with that. I know that I won't be the same person when I'm done with this book. I know that I won't achieve perfection, and that in expecting perfection, I'm setting myself up for disappointment. I experience anxiety when I feel bad about being imperfect, and depression when I lament what my life isn't yet. The antidote to these feelings is being grateful for what I do have and proud of what I've done so far. The societal pressure to achieve has gotten me pretty far in life, and I'm very thankful for that. I am not thankful, however, for the implication that impressive degrees and flashy high-paying jobs are the only way to obtain value. We all have inherent value on account of being human, regardless of our imperfections. I'm working on embracing my own imperfections, my fears, my anger, my preference for certainty over ambiguity, my defensiveness, and everything else I'll tackle in this book. It will be an honest look at how I can learn to make sense of my experiences, understand the extent to which they do and do not define me, and it will show you what it looks like to do the work that therapy, yes, even self-therapy, requires. It's never easy, but always worth it. Recognizing that we're already enough gives us a sense of hope that moving our lives forward is indeed possible. For many people right now, I get that hope seems like a scarce resource, but the best thing about it is that it's always available. Hope has helped people through some of history's darkest spots. And even if you don't agree with his politics, you know how powerful President Obama's 2008 platform of hope was. When we have hope, we believe that anything is possible, and we never want to let go of that feeling. So, the amount of time during which change is exciting is rather short-lived. We can easily get caught up in hopes and dreams of the life we can create for ourselves and the people that we could be. That hope is energizing, and it motivates us to change. After that initial spark burns out, though, it takes dedication to keep going. When my motivation waned, I started wondering why it was my responsibility to change if I wasn't the problem. Well, because that's life, that's why. Brendan Burchard, who studies productivity, found that many people who are driven to become better at their jobs sometimes just need to shift a few degrees in order to actually see some meaningful change. People who went to law school realize that they're better suited for wedding planning, for example, and they continue to work hard like they had been doing, except now they're seeing more results in their career and feel happier and less stressed overall. I had been growing in the direction I thought I should be growing, and shifted now toward being the person I most want to be. Instead of resenting the time wasted and the effort to become the wrong thing, I had to appreciate it for who it had made me. For better or for worse, all my past experiences had made me sensitive but thick-skinned, resilient, resourceful, compassionate, and incredibly hardworking. These were good skills to have as I trudged into the uncharted territory ahead of me. I had been so used to seeing myself a certain way and criticizing myself whenever I fell short of that ideal. Then, one night during a dinner discussion of personality, my dad said some stuff about how he sees me that totally surprised me. He saw me so much differently than I saw myself, and I wondered why I was so scared to let myself believe the wonderful things that he said about me. I realized then how much self-doubt I had adopted, and with my dad's reminder of all that I had accomplished, I saw no reason to keep doubting my ability to do any of the stuff that I still want to do. The Johari window, which I'd been introduced to in my undergraduate communications class, popped into my mind then. The window is made up of 4 parts: the open self, the hidden self, made up of 4 parts: the open self, the parts of ourselves both we and others know, the blind self, which is the part that only others can see, the hidden self, which is the parts only we know about, and the unknown self, which is unknown to everyone, including ourselves. I was living as though the only parts of myself that were known to me existed, but I was neglecting the parts of myself that I didn't know, and that prevented me from living fully. Now, living fully means accepting both the good and the bad parts of life, and honestly acknowledging how we feel about things. TV shows and movies are moving in a direction where they're saying more about both the good and the bad parts of life. Shows and movies seek not only to entertain, but to make a statement about the current socio-political climate. Naturally, this makes people feel divided on things. If you happen to support President Trump or certain other unpopular political stances, you probably feel pretty attacked. Everyone these days seems to have a view of others, and many of us feel so sure that we know who others are based on how they vote or the stuff they share on Facebook. We're all complex people though, and as I watch a variety of TV shows, I find myself relating both to characters who look a lot like me and those who look nothing like me. I feel an intense pang of compassion for certain characters, and it's often caused me to look deep within myself to figure out why I feel so connected to them. In doing so, I've learned stuff about myself I never expected to learn from TV. I'm learning that I'm so much more than I ever thought I was before, and how much the diagnosis of ADHD robbed me of the fullness of who I could have always been. Being upset about what has already been done is only a waste of time and energy. I can't change the diagnosis I got at age 4 that pigeonholed me into the role of the problem child. I can't help that it caused me to grow up feeling unworthy of love unless I worked for it. However, I can explore the effect these things had on me to the extent that you can feel them for yourself. In her poignant speech at the 2017 Golden Globes, Meryl Streep said that an actor's only job is to enter the lives of people who are different from us and let you feel what that feels like. While I'm no actor, I like to think that writers enjoy the same privilege and responsibility that she ascribes to actors. I am different than you in so many ways, and yet there is still so much we have in common. In showing you how it feels to be me, you'll come to learn what it feels like to be you and who that means you are. Meryl ended her speech with a quote from the then recently deceased Carrie Fisher. "Take your broken heart and make it into art." And I'd like to think I did just that. Welcome to my heart and mind. May they lead you to the peace you seek.